Earlier this spring, I was standing in line at Home Depot. My wife likes to flower garden, and I think it was the third trip of the day. And for some reason, the line was particularly slow that I was in, and this was early in the season, so they had the rack of flower seeds and vegetable seeds right there near the checkout so that you could see them. And they were the most colorful thing to look at in this slow line. Not that that bothered me, that slow line, very much, but so I was looking at the seed packs, and they're really pretty. I mean, they really are, the pictures of the flowers on there. And I don't want to kind of wax too reflective this morning, but I remember standing in line thinking about what a miracle these really are. I mean, the seeds are so tiny, aren't they? They're absolutely so very tiny. And from these little seeds, you can get these beautiful flowers. I mean, not just pretty, but aromatic. I mean, they tickle a lot of the senses. I mean, when God made flowers, he did something really, really, really neat with flowers. I just remember thinking about, boy, this is, you hold in your hand a miracle when you hold just a simple pack of flower seeds or vegetable seeds for that matter. But then I got to thinking about what happens to all the unsold seeds. I mean, they don't sell them all. What happens to the pack of unsold seeds? And then I started to think that the miracle of the flower is then rendered virtually useless. If they're never planted, the seeds are never nurtured, never watered, never fertilized. The miracle in this small package is rendered virtually useless. You and I, we are such miracles. Have you ever stopped to think about that? I mean, the bodies we've been given, our brains, and all that kind of stuff. We're walking, talking miracles in so many respects. And I know when I think about that and that I'm a miracle, well, I don't want to be a useless miracle of God. And in terms of thinking of the church and my Christian faith, I don't want to render the miracle of Jesus' resurrection to be useless either, to me personally and in my witness to the world. But every time, I don't know if you ever consider that, every time you and me, every time we keep our faith hidden, every time we refuse to live as a disciple, that's exactly what we are doing. We are rendering the miracle of the resurrection of Jesus as useless. You are probably familiar with Jesus' parable, the sheep and the goats, Matthew 25. Particularly striking parable. It really gets your attention. What's always fascinated me is that the difference between those identified as sheep and those identified as goats is what they did and didn't do. It's not what they believed, what they pondered, what they intellectually considered. No, the parable is about what they did and what they didn't do. I was thinking about that this week because this is the last Sunday of the church season known as Eastertide. Now, it's also Ascension Sunday, time when we commemorate, set aside to reflect upon the ascension of Christ, the last time the small group of disciples would see him on this earth. It's the last day that the paraments and the stoles are white, and I started to think that's a perfect opportunity to remind us all that we are always an Easter people. That's been our theme this morning. You've probably picked up on that. We are people of the resurrection miracle. And in fact, truth be told, every time we get together on a Lord's Day or at other times, we are actually reenacting a little mini Easter service. because we don't want to let an opportunity to go by in which to remind ourselves that we're people of the miracle of the resurrection over and over again. I've always loved the way former chaplain to the PGA, the Professional Golf Association, Larry Moody was his name, he wrote that we always need to remember that we're not in the land of the living trying to get to the land of the dying. He said, we're always in the land of the dying trying to get to the land of the living. And the way we do that is through the miracle of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. You're familiar with Winnie-the-Pooh, right? Some of the characters. Eeyore is my favorite. How many of you love Eeyore? Eeyore's my favorite. Probably because he's the only true realist of the bunch. Right? Pooh says, "It's a beautiful day," Eeyore says. And Eeyore says, "Oh, but there's a 10% chance of rain." Pooh says, "Oh, the grass is so green today." "Yeah, but you don't have to mow it." And Pooh says something like, "Why are you such a sad sack all the time, Eeyore?" And then Eeyore's response is, "I'm simply preparing for the impending unknown doom that undoubtedly awaits me." How many of you know an Eeyore? How many of you married one? Don't put your hand up. Maybe it's you. You know. As you know, I just found this out probably within the last 2 weeks. Pessimism, which is common to the human experience of us all, pessimism, I found out, is the only human emotion that can overpower our natural inclination to be optimistic. Who says you can't learn anything from the Nat Geo channel? Right? What I didn't know is that we're all born, apparently, with a natural inclination to be optimistic. Wow, that's pretty incredible. And some people are able to maintain that natural inclination for the whole of their lives. People who, maybe you know people who are just naturally optimistic, for whom the glass is always half full. Others of us, researchers have found out, through the common events of life, that we interpret them through our brains differently, and we are often rendered emotionally defenseless, they say, to withstand the consequences of pessimism. We are rendered emotionally defenseless to defend ourselves from the consequences of pessimism. Same program, I learned that recent studies have shown a higher percentage of people in their 80s in age describe themselves as optimistic more so than at any people in any other decade of their lives. Imagine that. Some of the researchers said, well, that's because they lived through their 70s and they're really fired up now. You know. Others think it's really because the experiences of our lives have told them that things do eventually work out in life. Now, they don't know how any more than the next guy knows how it's going to work out, but their life experience have combined to give them a whole pile of experience that teach them, well, that has given them an unspoken confidence that results in optimism. Gee, all of we Eeyores, we got something to look forward to, our 80s. Things are going to get better. I got to tell you, I love this phrase in a scripture lesson that Pastor Mira read for us. We have this hope, a sure and steadfast anchor of the soul. He's talking about Jesus, that's pretty clear, who's qualified to be our hope because of the miracle of his resurrection and his ascension to the right hand of God. where he intercedes for us. And it's not just this, I hope he puts in a good word for me, kind of intercession. The writer says here he is an anchor. And anchors are what? They are unmovable. In the Old Testament, the primary understanding of hope was waiting for what lies ahead. Kind of like the hope you have if you get on an airplane, the hope you have that you'll arrive at your destination on time even though your plane left the gate 20 minutes late. I hope. But in the New Testament, the whole concept of hope drastically changes. Did you know the Greek word that is translated in the English word that comes into our language as hope is the same word that's used to describe a rope or a cord that is pulled tight in anticipation. Now, the best example I have to understand what that means is I remember back to my very first parish of the North Bend Parish, Western Clinton County. And there was a fellow there he knew I liked fishing, and he said, well, I'm going to take you catfishing, because I'd never been catfishing. All right. So we went out to Kettle Creek State Park about 9 in the evening. Apparently that's when you go catfishing. That's when the catfish are ready to go. And he taught me how to fish for catfish. And he told me to take this line and put some lead sinkers at the base of the line, and then about a foot up from that, put a leader out with a hook on it, put a lot of worms out there, throw it out as far as you possibly can, let the line just roll off the reel until it stops, and then you just pull it tight. Not too tight, but just a little bit tight. And then you take your forefinger and loop the line under your forefinger so that you can feel the gentlest of tugs. And I understood what it meant to sit there in anticipation. It's a much different attitude, much different posture. And sitting in the seat of your plane, wondering if you're going to get there on time. See, as an Easter people, we just need to always remember we are people of the miracle of the resurrection. And we just confidently know that though the strong winds might blow, our stability and strength never falters because it's not reliant upon our ability, our strength. It is completely and totally because of Jesus Christ, because of the miracle of Him. That it's He who holds us up. That the confidence isn't a self-confidence, it's a Jesus confidence. No matter what has happened to our lives, no matter what happens to us, He is stronger than all of it. That's the way Easter people live and move, or as they say today, that's just how we roll. If you got that in your life, then great, celebrate it, praise Jesus for that. If you don't have that in your life, did you ever ask for it? Jesus says if you don't have it because you don't ask. Have not because you ask not. I end generally every funeral message that I deliver with the closing words of Psalm 23. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord for my whole life long. Now, I've said it with some emphasis here, but I don't think I'm being out of line here. These words reflect a very deep confidence that the writer has that nothing separates him from God. This is not a passive hope. This is a confident belief. And I have to tell you, my friends, I think that's what the world wants from us as an Easter people. I think the world wants us to be right. They do. They want us to be right. They want something to believe in this world. Some truth that they can build their lives on. And we're the ones who are to take the truth to them. by the way we live our lives, by what we say and do as we give witness to the miracle of the resurrection of Jesus. We are always an Easter people. But if we never live and move in faith except in here or in the privacy of our homes, as far as the world concerns, it renders the resurrection of Jesus completely useless. The world needs us to be the Easter people that we are. Please, this week, look for the opportunity you have to be the Easter people that you are.